Wow. Okay, we're live. Rule zero on the Rational Male channel today. No music. Sorry. No lead in. No nothing. We're just gonna start. Everybody, I think people are starting to like expect me to like put some
Gotcha, bitch,
or something like that every time I start a stream. But
I need to get one of those.
You know,
Wait, that was you doing that? I thought that's been John this whole time.
That's me. That's me. I've got a full sound. I've got a full soundboard now, and it's awesome. Welcome to Rule Zero, Rational Male style. Gosh, has it actually been 5 weeks since I did one? That's weird. I was looking at like some of the branding that I still had because I switch over my branding when I'm doing Rule Zero as opposed to my own show, and I'm like, gosh, that was a long time ago that I hosted. So, but that's a good thing. That means we're actually doing our jobs and we're passing it around to people. So today I have with me Rich Cooper from Entrepreneurs and Cars. I have Ryan Stone from 4R Consulting. I got that right this time. Troy Francis, who is a renegade and a playboy. And we have Carl, who is Carl from Black Label Logic. Greetings, gentlemen. How are you? We're going to have John will probably poke his head in here at some point today, too, I'm sure. How are we doing? How are we doing in the new world and the new
greetings and salutations?
It's funny because like you guys are all in different countries. Well, I mean, you and Rich and Ryan are in Canada, but like we're all in different countries right now, and it's interesting to see how this kind of I don't know. We're globalized.
People watch too much TV.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's or watch too much Twitter, and I'm me guilty too. But it's funny to me to see how a lot of people like sort of on the outside are viewing things right now, particularly in various countries. I did the reason I wanted to do today's topic, which is sort of like the age of emotions, is I'm doing two things. Well, first of all, back on Wednesday, I did a show called Feels Before Reels, and that's something we've kind of passed around, I think, in the manosphere for a long time, where we talk about how our politics or our social, just our globalizing social order as such as it is really based on emotions. And this is something that I've talked about before when I talk about how women tend to prioritize emotion before reason, and men tend to, their natural proclivity in ways is to prioritize reason before emotion. But I think what we're seeing right now, and I mentioned this on Wednesday, and I wanted to get the panel in on this. What I see is aiming for right now is sort of this social order or this political order or whatever we want to call it. I don't know where we're going with this. But it seems to me that it is all based on feels. It's all based on emotion. And we're at a point right now, I think, where it's never been easier to sort of stoke those emotions. So I wanted to get you guys' input on that and see like what you thought about, like I said, if you talk to even like black-pilled guys or MGTOWs or even MRAs, they'll say the same thing. They'll say that, women are all emotions. And I think what's happening right now is because we have feminized our boys as defective girls for so long, another thing we talk about all the time, is now we're sort of seeing the product of that. We're seeing the results of that. So I wanted to sort of do a roundtable here and see what you guys were seeing. Maybe you guys can add a little bit to that.
I'll go first. So I just came back from, my bi-weekly shopping run to Costco. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys have been in a large department store or any kind of large store lately, but they're pretty much either mandatorily making you wear a tampon on your face or it's optional, but still they'll hand it out to you at the door. But with Costco, they just hand it out to you and they recommend it, but it's not mandatory. But I'm going to say 97%, 98% of people in the store had a mask on. Like some of them spit shields, many of them gloves. And I'm just looking around at all these Nancys thinking to myself, you guys are the problem, man. Like the amount of people that have given up their freedoms and their rights, that have so easily given up their freedoms and their rights because somebody said that you're going to get sick if you don't do this. It's just absurd to me, man. Like
you got to come into the city, man. The city, it's like 60-40 not masked people.
Yeah,
it's and you're right. You can tell there's a difference. I'm like, these are the people that would have just said in the 40s they were following orders. I bet you anything, it's those same damn people.
I guarantee it. Like, this is like I've never seen this in my entire life. Is this going to happen in 2 years when the next, pandemic happens, or, are we going to have something new, beyond spit shields and masks? Like, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I posted it on Twitter this week, but there was a Indiegogo or a Kickstarter for some like Bubble Boy headpiece that they were launching, and they collected over $250,000.
Uh-huh.
Dude, go to my Twitter feed. They had collected over $250,000 from these idiots funding this Bubble Boy helmet. It basically covers your chest up, and it goes over the back. It looks like a hazmat suit. You look like a fucking retard wearing it. Sorry.
Well, to be honest, Rich, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, because I've been wearing a mask and gloves out in public for years, not because I'm scared of contagion. I just don't want I just don't want the average scrub to touch me. I mean, some of their soy might rub off on me.
Well, that's the other problem too. I've been listening to this book called Estrogeneration by Dr. Anthony J, and I got him booked for this Thursday on my channel on Playing to Win. And he's mentioned a couple. I mean, he focuses mostly on the sources of estrogen in food, toiletries, water. Like even the sunscreen that I'm wearing right now, I ordered it from his site last week, and it's a zinc-based sunscreen, so I'll probably look a little bit white. But like one of the things he's noticed in his studies, like even sunscreen, when you put it on, it actually binds to like estrogen receptors in UV light and prevents the production of testosterone, because it shows high levels of estrogen, because your endocrine system's a negative feedback loop. Basically, your balls make more testosterone when there's a lack of estrogen in your blood, right? Now, one of the other things he mentioned in the book was, we know throughout history that testosterone levels are about half what they are today versus, 500,000 years ago, because you can tell by the bone structure and skeletal remains that they excavate from dig sites that men had higher, like twice the testosterone levels that we have today, because of the jawline structure and the facial structure. It's just insane where we are today. And I think that this whole thing about, feels before reals, I think a lot of it's got to do with the low T nation that we're dealing with today.
I think Rich's point is one of the most disturbing things, as far as I was concerned, in the UK, was just how quickly everybody was happy to throw up their civil rights and
give up sex.
Well, yes, exactly. We're allowed to have sex again now, which is nice. But just throwing the towel and put through the most wide-ranging, comprehensive bill of destroying sort of civil rights and basic sort of like the fabric of human society, really, that's ever been put through in the United Kingdom, and everyone's just cool with it, And well, not everybody. I mean, there are people who are skeptical about it, but in the main, most of the population are just cool about it, and that is something that I've never been able to understand. I mean, like the whole thing with this pandemic, I found tricky from the beginning, just because the mortality rate has always been so low, and you've looked at it, and even from the beginning we knew that if they'd have come out and said, look, there's this virus going around, and if you get it, it's, to be honest, it's 50-50 if you're going to live or not, then yes, clearly you could understand some of the hysteria, but that's never been the case with this virus. So then when they start,
it's not even that the mortality rate's low. It also happens on average to people around 81, 82 years old. I mean, they're in the autumn years of their life anyway, and they probably just were going to die in the next 5 to 10 years regardless. It's just their lung infection got the best of them.
Right.
But just I'm not going to be crass about it. It's just that's the roadmap. So why are you making 20-year-old people break down when you should be locking down the sensitive populations?
Well, to be honest, like my main approach with it is like, if it kills everyone who's, let's say, had 100% mortality rate on people who are over 70. Okay, that's bad, but if you look at it on the bright side, that's a lot of property entering the market. It's going to be a lot of inheritance windfalls, and we're going to save a lot on Social Security and pensions. So at that point, I mean, maybe I could argue for like a tax cut. I mean, you could cut taxes by like 5% if all the old fuckers die.
Well, I forget who said this, and I don't know exactly what the quote was, but it's something like "War is the world's hygiene." Like it's sort of how the world sort of fleshes itself out. I guess I don't know where
war and disease.
I remember. I think I saw somebody quoted that not too long ago. But my focus on Wednesday was like just this emotional response, And I tried to, like, I have a 4-part series or 4-part essay that's on my blog that I'm still kind of on the fence as to whether I'm going to put it in book 4, but I think I have to now. But it gets into instinct, emotion, and reason, and how we prioritize those things. Now, I think I've brought this up certainly on this show, certainly on my own show, in that, when we talk
I think you've mentioned it once before.
Yeah, once before. Well, when we talk about like feels before reals, when we talk about like emotion before reason, I think one of the reasons why we're at where we are right now is because, like what Rich was saying a minute ago, is really since the late 60s, the early 70s, we keep talking about how we've been feminizing boys and how we need to like men need to get in touch with their feminine side. And I mean, really, it's been this 50-year experiment, and here we are right now. And what I'm seeing in the streets right now is not, when it comes to these protests and everything else that's going on, because we're into week 4 right now of all of this, and it's not stopping. And we're about to hit the 4th of July, Independence Day here in the United States. And I know some serious shit's going to go down. I'm fairly confident something's going to happen around that time, especially when these guys are out there pulling down statues and everything. It's just, again, it's feel. It's like they don't know the history of these things. They don't know anything other than it makes them feel bad, or that they should be doing these things, or they should be lashing out. I said back in April, before all this happened, when the pandemic was hitting, that what we're entering into is sort of this American spring, and everybody goes, you're imagining things, and here we are, right? We're about to enter into sort of the American summer right now. And the reason I said that is because all of the conditions were the same as for, like, say, the Arab Spring back in the day. When was that? 2014, 2015, I think. Yeah. And so you have 40 million people out of work in the United States. We have the Lost Boys generation, which we talk about constantly on this show. And these guys who are basically purposeless, guys trying to find themselves or find something to do with themselves. And they don't know how to get laid. They don't know how to do and pretty much anything else for themselves. Like what Rich, remember that guy who's got his YouTube channel? I forget, what is it, like Dad teaches you how to change a tire kind of thing?
Oh yeah, Dad Do I. If you go to the Tuesday shows, he'll show you how to use pliers.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? And how many followers does that guy have? Like
almost 2 million.
Yeah, 2 million already, right?
2 million.
Because and not a small reason why is because guys are looking for that, but I think really it's sort of like the follow on for like sort of the trad cons.
And that growth, by the way, happened in the course of like 5 or 6 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So you've got this really, I think, multiple generations, but at least the last 2 generations of young men who don't know what to do with themselves. They're out of work, and now everybody's filing into the streets. Yeah, Antifa and the rest of whatever else is looking pretty attractive at this point because it gives them something to do and gives them a focus. Let's tear down that monolith. Let's tear down this, whatever. And it doesn't. The point I'm making right here is that it doesn't matter what you tell these guys. It doesn't matter what you tell these, and what I'm seeing in the streets right now is mostly young women. And I think Rich, you and I have been sort of bouncing various pictures off of each other when we're looking at crowds of people pulling down a statue, or they're rioting or whatever.
Mostly women,
mostly young white women that are out there, at least in the United States here. And I'm looking at this, I'm going, this is where we're at, because we have prioritized as sort of a national social order that it's feels before reals. So we're at a point, and maybe you guys want to debate with me on this, is that I think we're at a point right now where it doesn't matter what the empirical evidence is. It doesn't matter what the history is. We're trying to erase the history, right? It doesn't matter what your reasons are. And I think I laugh now when I see people trying to give you, these well-reasoned, rationales as to why they shouldn't be doing this or why they shouldn't be, whatever.
That's such an MRA thing to do too.
Yeah, exactly.
Solve this.
Yeah, and the time for explaining is over. There's no reason. There's no rationality. It's all based on emotion right now. And I think that the powers that be, or whoever it is playing on this right now, particularly when it comes to young women.
Well, Carl had a good point about reality testing.
Well, 2 points here. I just want to add in, like, how different is the groups who are now running amok during a pandemic, protesting close to each other without wearing masks? and ISIS. That was both like a bunch of ruthless people, no big options to go forward in their life and do something productive. And instead, they go about destroying history. How different are those two things? And secondly, I think the main thing is that it used to be that I think everything has been emotionally driven and instinct driven, like all through human history.
Oh yeah.
I think the main thing that's different is that you used to be forced to rationalize that through a framework before you gave it an outlet. Like way back in the day, you had to go through the church. Like, well, I'm pissed at my wife for cheating, so I want consequences to happen to her, therefore I'm going to talk to my pastor. Then we got into the Enlightenment, and then it was, okay, I'm pissed because of A, B, and C. Well, I better parse that through a scientific framework before I make that public, otherwise I'll be ridiculed. And now we've just gotten to a point where you have these guys doing the big simping. So girls largely, but also very feminized men, think that emotions are reality. That was the big thing with the Me Too campaign too. Like, believe women, like believe their subjective emotional reaction to a given situation.
Right.
If she felt creeped out or if she felt harassed, then she was sexually harassed. If you woke up the day after you went out and you were drinking with the girls and you met this hot guy and you went home with him, you had a little bit too much, he had a little bit too much, you ended up sleeping together, and you woke up the next morning, you looked at him and you realized he had a class 2 jaw and needed a bad trim really badly. And you're
Class
like,
2
oh
jaws,
shit,
damn it.
and shit, I feel raped right now. Then you have literally been raped. And I think that's the gap they bridge between subjective experience and objective reality, and that's a gap that I think we need to restore quite badly.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, what Carl is saying is true, but there should still be a certain framework that you go through to make changes. I mean, it's not like it's now legally allowed to tear statues down, for example. I mean, there is, like in Bristol, when they tore down the statue of Colson, actually, they had been going through this democratic process to try to get the council to remove that statue, and it hadn't worked. And so you saw that outpouring of anger and they pulled it down. But the point I'm making is that those, like, legally, the restrictions still exist. But it seems to me what we're seeing is a sort of an outpouring of the internet into real life society. And that because the internet is still a bit of a wild west, really, it's all of these people, and it is emotion that's flowing through all of this, but it's all of these people passing this emotion onto each other and then them going, well, let's all go out and do these things on a mass scale. And that's why the authorities are finding it difficult to police, literally.
But they're not authorities to these people. That's the thing. We're having now is the age of Raz Simone, basically.
But the reason that's been allowed, the reason that's been allowed to happen, though, is because, or the reason that's occurred is because of the internet. It's because of this connectivity of the internet. Because the internet is unpoliced. That seems to me to be spilling over into real life now. So I think that's why we're seeing this.
But those authorities, it's their job to keep peace.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Right. Let's be honest, though. Like, the biggest, like, this is the internet. This is your real life moment. I think I saw this week, where like the soy boys trying to stage Black Lives Matter protests in Eastern Europe. Those guys just got beaten the fuck out of by like legit white supremacists. And like, say what you want about National Socialists, but those guys are fucking jacked, man. Like, you have one side looking like they've been mainlining trenbolone since they were, like, their mother's tits is leaking pure trenbolone. And you have the rest of the guys looking like they've been mainlining pure soy protein since they were born. That was like the... I would say it was like Hulk Hogan versus...
go ahead. I talked to... I remember when I was talking with Zuby, I asked him about that one quote that he had said, and I actually asked him if I could use it. But he said something about like how this, like the internet right now, particularly in 2020, but really over the last 10 years has been this great kind of social experiment for us. Yeah. And we don't know how to really respond to it as human beings because we've never had this kind of access before. We've never had this globalized access. Even back in like 2014, when like the Arab uprising or the Arab Spring, whatever you want to call it, that was really based on like cell phones at that time. It wasn't so much Twitter and social media, although it probably had there are probably some apps I'm not even aware of that they were using, but it wasn't as pronounced, it wasn't as developed as we see it today. And so yeah, you're right. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at right now is on Twitter, because I can't look at commercial news anymore without thinking it's all bullshit. And that's like on all sides. So yeah, go ahead, Troy.
It did occur to me the other day. I was thinking exactly what you just said, that Zuby said, and I was thinking, I don't know if we're really ready as a species for the internet. I don't think we knew. I don't think anybody knew the effect it was going to have. This, like you say, this mass communication. And I think now we're seeing the results of that. And who knows what the end of this is going to be? You know, like you say, it's a massive experiment that wasn't pre-planned, that nobody knows what's going to happen, and it's kind of causing havoc. I mean, obviously, there's been great things about the internet as well, but it's unleashed some very disturbing currents in society, I think.
Well, I think was Rich, weren't you talking about recently, or maybe you were going to do it on Monday? I'm sorry if I'm preempting you here, but weren't you going to talk about how dangerous it is right now, because because of Believe All Women and because of everything that's going on right now, that if you're dating the wrong girl and she gets pissed off at you because you didn't like return her text or her phone call or whatever on a date, all she has to do is say, "Oh, you're a white supremacist," or "you."
Oh, that was on a Bumble announcement. So Bumble on their page, when you logged in this week, they had a big announcement which I shared on Twitter that said something to the effect of, "We're vehemently opposed to racism. We support Black Lives Matter. We're going to be allowing you to report incidents of it on this platform." And what I said was, the way this is going to unroll is when women don't get their second date, or they get ghosted by some guy, and maybe they're of an ethnic minority, maybe they're slightly ethnic minority. They're going to cry racism, and they're going to get guys removed from the platform. It's just another version of using a Me Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I always get nudes from the girls, because that way, if they act up, their nudes become public. Like, girl, we have a deal. I'll keep your nudes private as long as you don't call me a white supremacist online. You call me a white supremacist online, all bets
Don't get
off.
me banned from dating apps.
Yeah.
But what Rich is saying is true, though. Like, I was seeing this. I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with Discord.
Yeah.
It's like a platform for gamers that people use to voice, and they had like this overlay too, like, "We support Black Lives Matter," and it was hilarious because like on top of the Discord, it was like, "We support Black Lives Matter and oppose racism," and under that were like a guildmate of mine posting 19 different George Floyd memes.
Mm-hmm. This campaign, I guess, here is from OkCupid, and this was from back in like 2017 or 2018. I can't remember what, but it's a series of these kind of I guess place cards or whatever these things are that they put on on trains and stuff. And what is this telling? Well, I mean, look at the message for this. It's basically, guys, if you don't vote for a woman, you're not going to get laid. You're not going to get a girlfriend, kind of thing. What's the reverse? It's okay not to date a man who won't vote for a woman. There's another one here. Let me see if I can grab the other one.
I got a question on this stuff.
I like the one that was like, "My pussy is open for refugees." I like that even more. I think that's a better campaign.
It's okay to choose to.
How's that worked out for
someone who's pro-choice, right? And there's other ones that are, like the OkCupid. It's all. It's everywhere on this train. It's everywhere you look. Now this is just like print media, and I know because this is still my forte, right? It's advertising, it's branding, and stuff like that. And it's like you can't escape it. You can't get away from the message. Even when you're not on Twitter, even when you're just riding on the train somewhere, you can't escape these messages. And what's funny to me is, I've told guys this before, is that, let me pull this out of here. I've told these guys before that, remember how I always say, use the red pill lens kind of thing when you're watching like an old movie or you're listening to some old music or something like that? It doesn't stop there. It's like, where are you right now? And of course, I face things when it comes. When red pill to me is intersexual dynamics. So when I see stuff like this, I go, I keep it, or I'll log it somewhere. But it's not just about old movies. It's not just about old songs that you have really a tough time listening to. It's everywhere you look. It's like the They Live thing. With you put the glasses on and suddenly you see the real world around you.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
You guys remember when it was like video games caused school shootings, and everybody kind of knows that that's BS. You don't play a video game and get violent.
Mm-hmm.
When I see something like this, I'm thinking back to that. It's like, there's no way somebody sitting in a subway is going to see 5 posters saying, you know, you got to vote for Hillary Clinton or you're a racist, and they're going to buy it. So my question is this, it's not a persuasive tool. So it's obviously something to give affirmations, or it's like, what do they call that? What's the type of ad again? Aspirational?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's somebody that already believes this, and this is something there to encourage them to use product X, services Y. So I don't think advertising is making it happen. I think it's the tail wagging the dog in this case.
Mm-hmm.
People are already getting this belief. Now, there's the argument it's come through universities and that kind of thing. It could just be, in my case, I'm pretty sure it's just the fact that ugly girls have found a lever that they can use to get their way, and they're pushing that son of a bitch as far as it'll go.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think that by looking at the advertisements and the external symbols, and it's good we're doing it here because it's a talk, we're really missing the bigger point, and that I think Rich was closer onto it. Guys don't have the testosterone en masse enough to keep their women on lock. I know it sounds a bit crude, but you know what I mean? Like, the word no just doesn't exist now. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
When you don't say no, then everybody's going to keep pushing boundaries. And we're finding, like, even now, oh, it's Seattle. You got to say no. You got to stop them from planting gardens in Seattle, and nobody's stopping them. There is no no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no discipline. It's basically the rule of law is pretty much gone. You know, I thought this was funny too, I've been having debates sort of offline about this as well, is that, do you honestly think we're going to have do you think elections are going to make any difference by the time we get to November? Like, if this is at the rate we're going right now, do you think that any kind of election will make any kind of difference?
They were decided 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's already been decided. Exactly. And and this was the other this is the other side of the story I wanted to sort of dig into with you. I'm of the opinion that we are probably going to see what has been called the pink out, hashtag pink out, which is, at least it's sort of like a play on the blackout thing that was going on. But I think what we're going to see coming up very soon is we've gone through the racial side of things. We're going to get into the gender side of things. And
Political Karen, fuck them.
We are not going to get to November without there being a, some sort of pink pussy hat march all over the world, not just here in the U.S. Every time this kind of thing happens and there's like a big movement, I think you're already kind of seeing it sort of mixed up into the Black Lives Matter thing. But I think there's going to be a full blown pink out, right? It's going to be this worldwide women's demonstration, because they're not going to allow Trump to get to November before they, scream at the top of they're allowed to scream at the top of their lungs.
Could that be bad optics?
I'm telling you right now, no girl getting dicked down on a regular basis from a top tier man will be at any of those protests. Mark my words.
Could that be bad optics for them though? Because they've already
they don't give a shit.
No, but remember that there's that video that trended this week, wasn't there, of the woman saying BLM is being co-opted by all these different things, and actually we're not about that. So if something of what you suggest happened, Rollo, there might be some pushback to that, mightn't there? Because they might say, well, hang on a minute, why are you bringing this into it? That's not the main issue.
I think we're already kind of seeing that right now. If you look at my follows on Twitter, don't think that any of those are because I'm like I'm endorsing them by following them, because I follow the UN and I follow UN women as well. And the reason I follow UN women is because that's where this is going to start. And if you look at the United Nations stuff, like what they're posting from the UN Twitter feeds and all that, they're very much behind Antifa right now. And if you look at the board of directors, if you look at the people who are pulling the strings at the UN, almost entirely women right now. Every expert that they quote, whether it's climate change or it's working conditions or whatever, almost in every instance it's a woman who is the quote unquote authority in whatever it is that they're throwing out there. And so to me, that says this is gynocentrism. This is a feminine primary way of sort of interpreting our world, which is feels before reals. So when we get into things like politics, when we get into lawmaking, when we get into legislation and those things, all of that is influenced by whatever those women in that are supposed to be our authorities are feeling at that time. And it's never about It's never about thinking it through. It's never about what's the history, what benefits the most people. It's funny to me that as socialist and as collectivist or communitarian as most women sort of lean towards, they don't really think things through because they're feeling it. It's whatever's giving them the good feels at the time, and that's all very, I think, short term. I don't want to say logic, but it's sort of short term feels versus long term like longevity of like keeping a society together.
Well, you have an essay on manufactured indignation. What's that called?
It's called indignation, actually.
Indignation, yeah, and
get off on it.
That's like one of the ones that I go back to on a regular basis over the last few years, and you're seeing that in society in general. It's like there's an absence of things for these women and these feminized boys and men to complain and worry and make drama about, so they just go out and do it. It's like, oh, this guy owned a slave 150 years ago and he shouldn't have a statue up, so let's have a big hissy fit about the whole damn thing. And it's like they move from one thing to the next thing and the next thing, and it's just, this is never going to end. We live in a society that is completely feminized. I'm definitely firmly seated in the let it burn, I don't give a fuck camp. But it's just so obvious to me now as I look at things with a red pill lens.
I was going to ask it. I mean, here we are. Like we've been saying this forever. I know. Aaron Clary. I try to get Aaron in on this show too. But Aaron is famous for having said, enjoy the decline. Well, here's the decline. How are you enjoying it?
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying it with you, gentlemen, today, and my coconut water and some vitamin D.
Hey, let me get to some of these supers real quick. Unplugged Fitness says the body positivity movement, technology demonizing masculinity, etc., has created weak men. Yeah, it's gotten to the point women thank me for telling them what to do on dates. Masculine men are now rare. Yeah, they are. You go and you look at the protesters and you look at the guys that are out there right now. It's not like, especially when it comes to Antifa. Like when I look at these videos, when I look at these guys, like I just watched one a couple nights ago, and it was these protesters, demonstrators breaking into like a Wells Fargo bank, and they're smashing in through the teller, the outside teller window. And Antifa always uses the same tactics, which is they've got some kind of demolition hammer, like some big long demolition hammer that you don't just find laying around in the street. You have to go and purchase something like that from like Home Depot or whatever.
You got to steal it from your dad's construction sites. What you got to do.
Exactly. And so what I see these kids doing, and they're the white kids, is what they're doing, is they're grabbing these hammers. They're taking, then they get exhausted because they're so weak, and the other guy goes, okay, give it to me, it's my turn, and then they take turns at it until the other one gets tired, and they pass it to the next one, and then they hit it. And they did the same thing here in Reno when they were smashing into the city hall, and it's this technique that they've been doing. And I see this, and I go, these are guys who couldn't swing a hammer because they don't have they don't have the endurance, they don't have the musculature to go and do something like that. And so I see these kinds of these tactics and these techniques, but it's mostly sort of these bored suburban kids that are out there, and for a great
feminized boys, like low T boys.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the time,
when I was a kid in college, that's what happened. There was two gangs in our town. There was like the native tribe that was on the North Shore, and there was like the rich white kids from up the hill that were always coke dealers. Those were always the two big gangs. And that let me know right away that bored upper middle class kids are dangerous. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Oh.
Yeah, like they can get away with it because their dads can afford lawyers. I just kind of want to get into it that, like, I hate these motherfuckers for proving horseshoe theory real, because that was kind of made a meme like MBTI on Twitter. But well, the tactics of the far left and the tactics of the far right tend to be the same. And like some guy commented, like, you needed like the Weimar Republic guerrillas industry from the right side. Well, you essentially have that now, but they're for the left, and I don't think it would improve the situation greatly if you suddenly had like right-wing guerrillas doing the same shit. What I think we need is, like, it's been a big thing, like, don't let the police use violence. I'm open to the point of, okay, you know what, if you see one of these demonstrations, like, just skip the rubber bullets and just go full live, man. That's
what they want at this point.
Well, it's slowing down my commute. It's being
Slowly down my computer.
Yeah, it's an
It's
interesting.
like
Well, Carl,
a second point though, like
go
on the
ahead.
thing with feminism and everything, like the best thing you can do is just adopt the statement. Like if your girl mentions feminism, just be like, oh come on, I mean, you're cute. Like no cute girls are feminists. If you drop that, they will never call themselves a feminist ever again. Like I'm slowly and surely, like I'm slowly and surely de-feministing my girlfriend's entire friend circle by using that. Like,
Evangelist work.
well, I was going to say, Carl, just to that point is, and I was talking to the guys before we came on. Was I woke up this morning to, I guess, the what was it? A video of some Antifa girl who got shot in Atlanta last night. And out of the blue, out of her backpack, she happens to have a tourniquet and all this medical, supplies to take care of it. Being shot wherever she was shot. And I think Rich saw it as well. And it's like, if she'd actually been hit by like a 9mm, round, she probably would have been torn apart. But she's kind of there, and it's almost like this crisis acting for Antifa at this point. And they call the EMTs and everything else, and they make a big deal of it. And I think really what we're seeing right now is kind of this escalation up to like they're looking for that kind of flashpoint right now. They're looking for that reason so that they can start shooting back with live ammunition at this point.
Well,
and
they wanted to pretend like it's Normandy.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at your video, Robo, and I've been shot before. I got shot with a .22 caliber, and like 2 points. Number one, if she got shot, it was a graze at best. It's not a through and through. It's low caliber, and like legit, like who the fuck carries a tourniquet in their backpack?
Well, they knew it was coming. They have the videos right there. There's
nobody who has first aid training brings a tourniquet anywhere.
Right.
Like they haven't used that. It's like leeches. Why would you bring leeches?
Well, and then the other thing is she doesn't do anything to get out of the line of fire. She just kind of plops herself down in the middle of the street right there.
Yeah, and to be honest, like when I got shot, it was during we were hunting small game, and it was low caliber.
Oh, I thought this was some kind of Twitter. I thought this was some kind of Twitter beef, Carl.
No,
I thought it was his ex-wife.
Well, but here's the thing is,
what I was getting at is like no one is that calm if they just got shot or stabbed, or like even if you like everyone's been punched in the face. Like if you get punched in the face, you're not that calm. And it, like the wherewithal to like, okay, I got hit with a gunshot. I'm going to sit my ass down. I'm going to reach into my backpack. I'm going to get a tourniquet. No one is that bloody calm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
she'd have gone through shock. She'd have been sweating.
Like either this girl needs to be in the special forces, or there's something wrong here.
So I'm looking at this goes to kind of Troy's point here as well, is that when I'm seeing this, I'm like, what is this intended to do? Let's just say, for sake of argument, that this is staged. Okay, what is that meant to do? Well, it's meant to stir emotions. It's meant to stir up. It doesn't matter what the actual case is. You'll have a million people saying, no way that she really got hit. She was like talking about how she had got shot by some guy who was dressed in an American flag or something like that. And to me, that sounds like it's agitation is what it is. It's agitprop is what it ends up being. But it's never been easier to do those things. It's never been easier to stir up worldwide, global. And maybe this isn't the incident. Maybe this won't be it. But I think they're waiting for something that is going to stir those up.
Do you want something really spicy? Like really spicy? You're not going to like this.
Give it to me.
I was just listening to that, her thing about how it was the man in the MAGA hat that tried to sexually assault me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it just like 100 years ago in the States that the girls would say, oh, the help assaulted me and cheated on me. Definitely not your brother-in-law. And they would hang the dude from a damn tree.
Mm-hmm. I think
Isn't it weird how there's that kind of parallel to it there?
Well, I don't know how I don't know if I necessarily believe this or not. It might be true, but I've read guys say that the thing with Jesse Smollett when he was that whole
that guy
that was supposed to be the flashpoint that we're at right now. But that was actually they were trying to make that work out, but it just didn't work out the way they wanted. He fumbled it so badly that it didn't end up being what they thought it was going to end up being. And so, but look at each one of these incidents. I know you're looking at the chat. If you look at each one of these incidents that's happened, it's meant to stir that emotion. It's meant to agitate and meant to do to get us to where we are right now. That's why they are attacking statues right now, because they know it has an emotional impact to see George Washington have a flag burned on him and pulled off of a podium, or pulled off an obelisk, whatever it is. And they're not going to stop there. They're going to keep going. But yeah, I think what the important part to remember is not so much like the act. Okay, well, you can say what you want to about that, but like when we say you're going to pull this thing down, there's an emotional response to that. That's what they're trying to trigger right now. It's an emotional.
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
Protesters trying to generate an emotional response to somebody else so they can escalate.
But remember that the media and also social media as well runs on emotion, doesn't it? So there's a synergy between the two things. Because why is Twitter so infuriating, but also so kind of addictive? It's because of the emotion, and they know that, and they generate that. So you go on Twitter, you get really angry, you start posting back, and they want that. So the two things kind of reinforce one another, don't they? Because the media certainly wants emotion in order to survive, because if it bleeds, it leads, and the social media companies want it as well. So we've got this like vicious cycle, I think, where it's just one thing's driving the next.
Yeah, and the last time they did it, the Proud Boys became a thing, and then they backed off because Gavin he didn't want to start a war. I don't think the next guy is going to be that civil, and that's the part that kind of concerns me. These guys want this emotional reaction. I don't think they do.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think this would all be happening right now if we didn't have a device that we could put in our hand that could record a video and you could upload to a site?
Not at all.
No, we never even know it was happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I think that the ramifications of social media, and also the ability for us to broadcast, for us all to get our phones out and broadcast.
And there's no barrier. I mean, you just have to have a phone and just to log in. And that's
we are the media now. We are the media. Everyone is the media, and anybody can lie, and anybody can stage something, and anybody can try to make things look and it's all.
And we're worse than CNN.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's funny is like it's weird to me because like I'll go and I'll talk to my mother-in-law or I'll talk to my father-in-law who don't really, they're not on Twitter, so they're only like news source is like Fox News or whatever it is that they're looking at, right? And obviously, I think right now, certainly over the last 10 years, we've established that pretty much all of the mainstream media right now has been lying to us and bullshitting us for a very long time. And now we have a device in our hand, and we have the means to see just how much bullshit they've been feeding us for, certainly the last 10 years, probably a whole lot longer before that when we didn't have this kind of access. And now that we do, it's weird to me to see like what people who are still sort of locked into like mainstream media as their only source of like what's going on in the world. And so what do those people do? Well, they react emotionally like anybody else does. And they say, okay, well, because if it doesn't click with whatever their ego investments are, and for the most part, those ego investments are, from years and years of blue pill conditioning, right? It's years and years of like, you need to be a feeler, Johnny. You need to be more like a woman, Johnny. You need to get in touch with your emotions. You need to be, be more sensitive and express yourself emotionally. And guess what? I said this on. When the Nicholas Cruz shooting went, I was on Pat Campbell's show and we were talking about like what's wrong with the kids today, right? Because the first thing out of anybody's mouth is, well, we need to have more caring and loving, compassion towards our boys, so that we tell them that they can't cry and we smack them upside the head, and it's like this old chauvinistic, stupid, old school, old lies that we've been feeding ourselves or whatever in the media for so long about how we raise kids or raise boys, and it's all bullshit. And the reason like a guy like Nicholas Cruz goes into a high school and shoots up is because he's having an emotional outburst. That was one isolated incident of one kid in 2018, 2017. And I said that at the time. I said he is a product of the trophy, the participation trophy generation. He's doing exactly what he's been trained to do, which is have an emotional. He's expressing himself emotionally with a high caliber.
The parents aren't raising him either, though. That's the thing. The parents are doing this for their own sake.
Yeah.
It's the current narcissistic parents raising these codependent kids.
Well,
The
I don't know
current
if you guys know the
generation
full
is an
story with that
example.
whole Nicholas Cruz situation, but he was he was he was actually adopted, and his mom had some drinking or drug addiction. So he basically came from fetal alcoholism, whatever the hell that thing's called.
Mhm.
And then I think 13 months later, his mother had another baby from a different guy who she also gave up for adoption to the same family as well. Nicholas Cruz was raised by his brother. If you look at his brother, he looks nothing like him. But he was raised with his brother by his adopted parents, and the adopted father died when they were like 3 or 4. So both of those kids were raised by a adopted feminized mother. So it's no surprise that he behaved the way that he did.
Mm-hmm. I got a
Oh,
question.
dude, that's some abandonment issues there.
I got a question
Let's
here.
be
serious
honest,
issues.
though, that
Warrior Racer says, how does a man protect himself for being seen insensitive into an emotional world?
Shut up. Just tell him to shut up and eat a dick. That's it.
Yeah. Why do you care how you're seen?
Why do you care exactly?
Why is their perception of you your concern?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think the
My
current
advice is
generation
as pragmatic
is
as you possibly can. Go
The
ahead.
current generation is an example of why more people need to beat their fucking kids. I mean,
Dude,
like,
I've
legit-
said that for the last couple of years, and every time I say it on Twitter, there's always a bunch of spazzes that come out. Oh, Rich advocates beating your children. You know how many times I've raised my hand to my child? Probably like once, and even then, it was totally fucking deserved.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
like, legit,
Oh, you had to.
I wish, like, if I just hope that people get some real fucking problems soon. It's like I'm not sure how.
That's it. They don't have any real problems. We don't have any wars to fight. We don't have any famine issues. We have abundant food available everywhere. We have free medical services practically throughout the world. Like, there's no real. The biggest issues is low T and a bunch of weak ass men that are manufacturing indignation like women, and they're siding with a feminine imperative, behaving like male feminists. That's what the problem is. We need
But
a
if you
war.
go
We need
back-
something to toughen up these little wimps.
But if you go back a bit, I mean, beating your kids wasn't controversial 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's been controversial.
They didn't even question it. I got beat when I was a kid, and I deserved it every single time because I was behaving like a prick.
I think that's the key though, because it's consistent. Like you knew there was a consequence and it was consistent.
Oh, I
The
knew it was
problem that when
coming when I
people
did
think-
something wrong.
But that's the thing. When people think of like smacking your kids around, they think you had a hard day at work and you take it out on your kids. The kid doesn't know that. He just sees like non-consistent parenting. And I think that's a problem because people assume it's that one and they completely forget, like you said, you had strong boundaries developed because you knew that there was an ass whooping coming at the end of this thing, and you screwed up occasionally, but it was consistent.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the feel-good parenting is it's never consistent because it's subjective. So of course these kids aren't going to know how to have a structure in their life because they've never given one.
There's no boundaries.
If you
There's
go-
no boundaries
like,
is what it is.
But I
Yeah, but isn't-
like
isn't-
this,
isn't-
oh, sorry,
ahead,
Troy,
Paul.
but
Go, Paul.
just
Go.
a short story. Like my uncle, he's always loved dogs, so he's always had dogs, and he bought a German Shepherd at one point, and everyone who's had a German Shepherd knows that you have to race. Well, all dogs need to race consistently, but German Shepherds even more so. There's a reason why they're guard dogs, and my uncle was really my uncle was really consistent with this dog, like never on the furniture, follow commands, do this, do that, otherwise get smacked around a bit.
Yeah.
His girl at the time was really inconsistent with the dog, like, okay, you can get on the furniture when I want you to get on the furniture, you can, do whatever you want when it's okay with me, and then she was inconsistent. The result was they had to give up that dog and have it put down because, like, the dog was I don't know, borderline personality disorder because he just didn't have any of that structure while growing up. So the dog, he would randomly bite people, he would randomly bark at people, he didn't follow commands, etc.
Yeah.
He would randomly. It's the same. And it's the same thing with humans, though. Like if you were raised in like an unpredictable environment, you become unpredictable as a human. If you're raised in a stable environment, you become stable as a human. And if
Well, the stability in the environment comes from the masculine in the house, right? It comes from
Right.
the man. It comes from the testosterone. That's where the boundaries are set, right? And we've been removing that for years. We've been saying, no, you can't raise your voice. You have to be more kind, be more humble, have more emotion, get into your, feels and all that. And now we have an environment where you go to a schoolyard in the wintertime and kids when I was a kid, you take a big run up to a patch of ice, like a puddle that would freeze overnight, and you slide across and see how far you can go. They don't let you do that anymore.
I love
they
that
don't even
game.
let you. Yeah, they don't let you do anything anymore in schoolyards. So kids don't have an outlet to go and burn off all that energy. Instead, what they do is they medicate the crap out of them, give them things like Ritalin and Adderall and all this kind of stuff. Oh, he's got focus disorders. He's got this disorder. And then they just end up being like these zombified mummies that are on medication the whole time to help them cool their jets. And the teachers can't deal with it. The teachers can't deal with the children. They can't enforce boundaries. The parents don't let them. It's always the teacher's fault. So it's like all of this like vicious cycle starts in the household because we don't have men at the head of the household anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even the bullying thing. Do you ever see that where, remember, like kids get in fights? That still happens. Kid fights a kid. He defends himself. They suspend both the kids.
Right.
So right now, what lesson is that kid getting? It's not that you're allowed to defend yourself. It's that violence is always wrong and that you should take that punch because that's the right thing to do. And of course, you're going to raise guys who now, when these Antifa dudes are running through the streets, aren't going to defend themselves because their entire life they've been told that if you do that, you'll get punished even worse.
Yeah.
And then the aggressor
learns,
there
are still some good fathers out there that are like telling their kids, you know what? It's a good thing you beat the crap out of him. I don't care that they suspended you. Stay home for a day. I'll take you to the office, teach you what the business world looks like. But you did the right thing. And that's what fathers should be doing still. It doesn't matter what the school system does outside of the household. If they're going to say you're both expelled for fighting, even though the other kid was picking on the other kid that got expelled, but he's defending himself, he's basically standing up for himself. Or I've seen other, scenarios where there's been bullies picking on this one kid and another kid steps in to kind of stand between the two. And he also gets expelled for fighting off the bullies. And he's doing the right thing, in that sense as well, too. But let the school system do what it wants.
Are dads doing the right thing? And how many opportunities is the dad even available to do the right thing?
That's the problem, too, because something like 43% of households are raising children in a single mother household. So there's an absenteeism of fathers in homes that can, have words on these matters. Like you're not allowed to have words on these matters. There's a lot of men that are even married today that are, supposed to be the heads of their households, but they don't have that ability to.
Yeah, they were raised the same way.
Because but
all of this that you're talking about, this has been going on since like the 70s and 80s, really, hasn't it? This kind of softening society.
Dude, even when I was a kid, I remember when I was 9 or 10 years old, I started to hear shit like, "Oh, you can't discipline your kids, you can't spank your kids." Over. Yeah, maybe I can get away with shit now, but I didn't. My dad still enforced boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was certainly, back in the day, back in the 80s and so on, it was starting to soften up, wasn't it? But
it was.
That's the problem because those kids are parents now.
Yeah, but are we attributing that? What's your guys' view on that though? Are we attributing that to the feminization of society? Has it been 100%. That long in the making?
Because what was happening? It's been in the making since the second wave of feminism, the 60s, 70s.
I would say arguably since the sexual revolution, since the boom.
So since the birth control pill.
Yeah, and if you go and again, this is something that I sort of focus on a little bit in book 4 is the right at about 1965, 66, 67, somewhere in there, like right as hormonal birth control it gave women this unilateral control over the human reproductive process, and not just in the United States, like worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah.
When you see this increase in abortions and legalizing abortions, the stigma of being a single mother went out the window.
Completely.
Prior to 1965, if you were a single mother, you brought shame on the family, and there's a social stigma as well as a religious stigma, all gone. In fact, been replaced, and we're going to see just how replaced it is here on Father's Day tomorrow, because the first thing we're going to talk about is how single moms are heroes on Father's Day because they're taking over the roles of fathers as well and have been doing a really job for 5 decades now. So
go to my Twitter feed, Rollo, and see the first post that I came across already today. They're saying that Father's Day is bad for same-sex couples and for single mothers, and it needs to be abolished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
because we've gone
patting themselves on the back.
Well, and that's why I keep saying that we're going to see it. Maybe there'll be a trigger event. I don't know, but at some stage we're going to see some kind of event, I think, or something. I'm betting it's going to be once Joe Biden decides who the female running candidate he's going to be with. Once he
won't decide. Doesn't even know where he is.
that's when the pink out's going to happen. When
you'll pick the hottest girl out of the bunch. I can bet you anything.
I know, but
Pick the ones with the nicest smelling hair.
If you look at the statistics from say like 1965. For abortion, for no-fault divorce, for Duluth model feminism, for Title IX, for child support law, legislation, for consent laws, for everything that we sort of take for granted right now. All of those, if you look at them on a a graph or something, like they all shoot up right after 1965. What happened then? Sexual revolution and hormonal birth control. It's exactly the trigger event that started that thing off. And so we see all this, we take it for granted at this point, but there's several generations that some of them are still alive where who lived prior to that have seen us go from sort of, being one way to being where we're at right now. And as I was saying before, it's like, you're going to see, I think on Father's Day, it's no longer toxic masculinity. It's masculinity itself is toxic, because they have to, especially now, very vital for them for the gynocentric social order to smash that into our brains right now, because anybody who goes out and tries to resist this or tries to push back against this, first of all, you're going to lose your job. You're probably going to lose your wife. You're probably going to lose your livelihood. You're going to lose everything if you in any way push back in the most mildest, most measured, like try to be reasonable. You cannot reason with this anymore. But they have to.
Well, you can't reason with crazy. Is what it boils down
we're
to.
Beyond. Right? We're past the point of saying, "Hey, let's have a reasonable debate and see." You're not going to change anybody's mind.
No, you can't.
You can't change anyone.
It's not about changing minds, though. It's about what are the most known things for anyone who's ever dealt with customer support tickets? Like, customers who are happy are never vocal. Customers who are unhappy are very fucking vocal. And I think at this point, you have the extreme on both sides are quite vocal. And you have a bunch of people in the middle being like, what the fuck is wrong with the retards on both sides? Sorry for killing monetization with that one.
All right.
We killed that when he was talking about being kids.
But I think that's the kind of the issue here is the large majority are not involved in the discussion because you haven't inconvenienced them enough. And once they start being involved, it was one of those things that was kind of funny when you look at Twitter. Especially MGTOW Twitter, you'd think just going out and hitting on a girl will get you a rape charge. Well, I've done 300 first dates in the last 2.5 years. I'm still to get a Me Too charge. I'm still to get a complaint. And I've been shot down, I've been successful, whatever. And reality is not Twitter. Reality is not the news media. Reality is that most people, for every kid who punched a bully back, there's a father who wasn't there and a mother who admonished him for him getting expelled because he defended himself. There's also a dad on the other side that's okay, that's a good one, son, but you broke your finger throwing that punch. Come in the backyard and I'll show you how to throw a punch so you'll really hurt the motherfucker next time. And I think once we start to get the majority involved on this, it improves. But the majority doesn't really... The majority of what I like to think are reasonable, average AQ, but sensible people get to speak. Their position is, okay, that guy's dumb, that guy's dumb, screw both of them. And that's why the Democrats are losing every damn election. Because they're losing Senate seats, they're losing House seats, they're losing local elections, county elections, they're losing all of them because they're trying to pander to fringe communities that are very vocal, but a very, very small part of the population. Whereas Republicans are able to appeal to a wider demographic by focusing on larger issues. So, yeah, you may be able to get 5,000 people to march in Seattle or to march on Washington, but they're impeding 40,000 people or 400,000 people that are just trying to get to work and trying to get home without taking too much time. And if you ask me, I like the environment, I like the planet we live on, I think we need to preserve that. But if your march for the environment impedes my commute by 25 minutes going to work and 25 minutes going home, well, fuck you and the environment. You just cost me an hour of my life. I'm going to vote for the right-winger who's like, drill, baby, drill. And I think that's the main thing. Like, you have the large majority who couldn't give a shit, who are focused on inconvenience. And if you inconvenience them, they vote against you. If you annoy them, they vote against you. And I think we have, like, basically a generation of freaking Karens on the left. And we have a generation of Dougs on the right. And both of them are out of touch with what the majority of people are feeling. So they may be able to make a lot of noise, but they're not going to bite that hard. So I'm not the least bit concerned, because, like, the left, that's basically huff and puff and blow your house down, but your house is made of bricks. And the far right will beat the crap out of you, but, like, what kind of political pull do they have in a reality where just being right of Barack Obama makes you a Nazi? None.
Well, he's got a good point that, I mean, I think most people actually off Twitter and off probably Reddit or wherever else you're going for your dopamine hits, don't really care, or they're sort of bemused by a lot of these events. They're like, what the hell, this is just crazy. But a lot of people seem to jump on board, I mean, we're seeing some pretty extensive riots, aren't we, in the US at the moment? I mean, I remember back in 2011 when there were riots in the UK, and I mean, it started off, it was triggered by it was triggered by an event
Yeah, but how many people over 30?
Mate, no, my point is that it was triggered by a genuine event. Somebody was killed by the police in North London, so there was protest at that, but then loads of people jumped on the bandwagon. So it sort of went beyond what it was originally about, and you've got national riots, and I think that's what we're seeing here. So while Carl's right that I think most people don't feel so strongly about to either extreme. There is this kind of tinderbox thing, isn't there, where you get a lot of people who are jumping on the bandwagon for different reasons. I personally think the riots wouldn't have been as bad if we hadn't just been locked down for 3 months. I really think that's had a big effect on this as well.
Yeah.
Boredom and a grudge.
I think Ryan made a good point there too, and this is I think what's funny is a lot. Whether you believe this or not, I don't know. Maybe I'm leaning over into conspiracy theory here, but like when we had the Arab uprising, when they had the Arab Spring back, and I want to say it was 2013, 2014. I'm not really sure exactly what year it was, but a lot of the same tactics that we're seeing used on American youth right now, particularly out of work kids, like you're saying, Ryan, how many of them were over the age of 30, right? How many of them had families? How many of them, whatever? But the same tactic was used back in the Arab Spring, which is you've got these large populations of unmarried, unemployed young men between the ages of 18 and 24 who were just ready for that kind of agitation. And now we have all of them have I don't know how, but they all have cell phones, or they have ways to sort of coordinate themselves. And so you get, uprisings in Tunisia, in Libya, in Egypt. What is it?
Those were disenfranchised men, though. That's the difference here. You guys even noticed yourself. It's all chicks. It's all Becky out there.
Yes.
Girls in their 20s.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference here. If this was a male grievance inspired uprising, you would see it as a lot more violent. And right now it's like a weird social emotional flex.
Yeah, a lot of girls, I'm noticing this too. A lot of girls are going out to these protests because it's a social event. And so protester guys, right? It's
a good photo opportunity to get it, to get a shot for the gram to show themselves virtue signaling for Black Lives or whatever.
You see these girls getting like Instagram shots from their Instagram boyfriend who are more than happy to like feed that bullshit. Right. Oh, here we are rebuilding the city. Here we are cleaning up the graffiti. Here I
am, hopefully getting a whiff.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny to me, and this is actually the point I wanted to make, is that the sexual dynamics, like the gender dynamics that are involved in like sort of like chaos, like social chaos. It doesn't change anything about the red pill. Everything I've been putting this out ever since like the pandemic started to hit. It's something I keep coming back to, is that the red pill is confirmed in every new crisis, and here it is all over the place.
It's everywhere, man. When you go down to the rabbit hole and you enter the matrix, you can't miss it.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
Oh, the one doing the twerking?
Yeah, the twerk in front of the cops, buck naked. Some girl comes up, walks, slaps him on the ass. I'm like, right there, 2020 in a nutshell.
There you go. Sign up now.
No,
Feminism, 2020.
Yeah, fun comment on the one in the super chat you just put up, Rolo, from Vincent McLeod.
Yeah.
I was expelled at one point for punching a guy out.
Mhm.
And my father punched a teacher who expelled me out.
That's hilarious.
Good man.
Your dad's tougher than my dad was.
People want to say this is a generational thing, and it is, but it's also a progressive kind of thing. So we've gone from my dad beat the shit out of me. I'm sure you guys probably got hit too. I'm like, what, Troy? You're in your 40s, right? You're in the mid.
Yeah. It was a thing. It was a thing back in the day when I was a kid, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you didn't behave, you got spanked.
You weren't a man until you fought your old man, and I'll just leave it there.
Yep.
Yeah, there
True.
you go.
You know, did I got John? Oh, John. Hey, hold on.
The champ is here. The champ is here.
All right, chime in. Everybody wants to hear the commander.
Hot Dude Army General.
Sergeant Slaughter of the Hot Dude Army has arrived.
What I missed? I slept. I fell asleep. It's like 1:40 in the morning here in Tokyo.
That's okay. We're just sort of analyzing sort of like the global social situation right now, and how
angry at those stupid feminists.
Yeah, well, that too. Always, right? But no, I mean, as far as you're in Japan. I mean, do you see any? Is there any kind of reaction now, or is it kind of just like all over?
No, you had all the try hard. Okay, you had all unfortunately, when you're living in Japan, the nearest state is California. So the majority of the Americans that come over here are Californians. So they bring all that stupidity with them. But no, they organized some march, and I cannot express to you how much they don't care about foreigner affairs so much, like the Japanese in general. So the fact that I saw it here, I just want to tell everybody, I told you so about the coronavirus. You guys, people thought I was crazy. Not you guys on the panel, but the chat. Nobody cares about coronavirus now. I thought this was the global pandemic that was supposed to kill millions and millions of people, and we have to social distance, and then now we have the exact opposite of it. So I just tell everybody, I told you so. You got played by the media.
Yeah. I think that's funny because now, you're right. People don't care, and it all depends on whatever your politics are, whatever your ideology is. So it's okay if you're out there pulling down statues to go out there without a mask. Although you do see people with masks on, which is kind of ridiculous when in practice. But then I think what was it that there's going to be a Trump rally or something like that. I don't know if I think it's in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've been watching that. I've been watching actually Pat Campbell's feed about that. And they're trying to find ways to force people to wear masks at this rally because they're worried about coronavirus. And I'm like, this is at this stage, who believes anything that the media says? Who believes anything? And that's what I was going to say, because I know Carl was talking about this before. It's Republicans and Democrats and everything. But at this stage right now, does that even matter? I mean, it seems to me like ideas of left and right or Republican and Democrat and it's old order thinking. Like the Democrat side, they're not Democrats anymore. There's something else, and the Republicans, there's something else. I don't know what to even call them anymore. We just say
they're
left.
all assholes.
Yeah, I don't even call them anymore.
Just call them all assholes.
I'll go and I'll watch, people will talk about the Democrats are complicit in all of this violence and all of this rape and all of this, autonomous zones. And they'll say that. And then I'll go and I'll watch Tucker Carlson, who is supposed to be this right wing kind of pundit. And he's calling out Republicans for doing jack shit and not doing a damn thing about any of this stuff. And it's so is that even are those titles, are those identities? We talk about identity. Are they even any? Who care? Who cares anymore? It doesn't make any difference anymore.
Society
they were
is
selling
watered down.
liquor.
It's
You'd have been
all
working
feminized. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, New Democrat, liberal, conservative. They're all watered down. Their T levels are all far too low. Straight up.
Yeah.
Well, there's been this thing recently, hasn't there? And Fox Day referred to this in his last stream, which is that conservatism is a busted flush because what is conservatism conserved in the last 50 years or something? There was an article in the Spectator to the same effect, I think, the other day. So yeah, you've got that, and then of course on the Democrat side, you've got the craziness of the
extreme
identity. Nobody's speaking out against it,
Well, it's not conservatism anymore. Now it's just called conservatism. Now it's called the Republicans. But realistically, the entire Western world is leaning into a liberalization sort of area. The globalization and liberalization and pacification of society is what it is.
Yeah,
I would argue, global, not even liberal. Global.
Well, I mean, what happened in the lockdown in the UK, for example, was led by Boris Johnson, who's got the biggest conservative majority in 30 years in this country. But really, I mean, imagine if Jeremy Corbyn had won that election and done this. Imagine how those conservatives would have been crying out against because lockdown is such an unconservative policy, isn't it? Any way you look at it, shutting down all the business, shutting down all business activity for an undetermined period of time is just, it is off the scale. I mean, this is the most socialist policy that's ever been implemented probably in this country. So, and why did that happen? Well, it happened because everyone else in the world, or most other people in the world, did it as well. But it also happened because that's what the media were calling for. That's what the establishment were calling for.
Well, in my mind, the biggest divide between liberalism and conservatism in our modern definitions is individual liberty versus collective best worth. It's basically the needs of the many and the needs of the few. And to me, this whole, I didn't mind the lockdown so much. It hurt business, and yeah, that hurt me personally quite a bit, but I'm okay with that to help and support our aging population and people who have pre-existing conditions. Perhaps they should have taken steps to be inside more. But the most issue I have is that the definitions have no meaning, because liberals are now anti-free speech. Conservatives are pro-free speech. That used to be the other way around.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. And I think the whole point is that definitions have lost all their meaning. And at this point, it's just a matter of tribal identity more than anything else. Because in order for the word liberal or conservative, liberal literally means for liberty or liberty. It's derived from the Latin word. And how liberal are you if you're pro show trials, you're pro denying people the right to speak their mind, you're telling people to stay locked in their house, and you're telling business owners to stay shut? And how conservative?
Don't worry about getting looted because you have insurance.
And how conservative are you if you couldn't even make pickled onions? How conservative are you? You'd fuck up a brine that's basically sugar, salt, and spices with vinegar. It's conservatives have failed their mission, liberals have failed their mission. My stance is that everyone who's a politician now needs to be drummed out of office. We need to restrict the vote again to people who are competent enough to have
property ownership.
Because, well, yeah, I agree with Rich. Property ownership or net positive tax contribution, because H.L. Mencken said, democracy
public service.
Well, no, but H.L. Mencken had a couple of my favorite quotes in his book on democracy, and one was, "Democracy is the art of running the circus from the monkey cage." And the second one was, an election campaign is a pre-auction on stolen goods. And until you actually make people invested in democracy through action, either through paying taxes, through owning property, through running a business in a given country, people are just going to vote to tax the fuckers who aren't me to give me shit. And that's what we're seeing now. We're actually seeing the Western world turn into a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And that's why China is basically beating us, because China aren't really looking for a popularity contest in their own country. They want to dominate the world. And as a result, they will keep beating us because they have a goal as a nation, and you don't have to deal with, the random bat soup salesman in the Wuhan market influencing policy. And honestly, it sounds elitist and negative, But your average citizen is not competent enough to have a say in how you run the country. You need a license to drive a car. You have to pass a test, and you have to show that you can drive. But any moron can vote. Like, I know people who say, like, I'm not interested in politics, I don't follow the news, but they vote. And that is your problem. Like, you need to restrict, because the government in a democracy has a monopoly on violence. They're the only ones who can tell us, okay, you do this or you get put in jail. You do this or we punish you. So the biggest thing is managing that monopoly in a sensible manner. And I don't think we've been doing that well enough in the West recently. And I think that's all because of no skin in the game. The majority of people voting have no skin in the game. So the ideal thing, like, vote for more government, you get a safe government job, and you don't have to worry about being fired for incompetence.
It's funny because that's an easy argument for people to make. Think about all the people right now who are like very pro-mask and are like, hey, the dudes in the lab coats are saying to do it. Trust the experts. Everybody has their own experts they're willing to trust. But when it comes to that, who decides on how governance works? Everybody's vehemently opposed to it, which is because it doesn't work for them. It's all strictly just realpolitik, will to power. Nobody actually cares about authority unless it reflects what they want. And that's Rollo's point on feeling over real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to say is, and I like the, bringing up the idea of tribalism here is because it's one of my biggest points of contention with even guys like I really have a lot of respect for, like God Saad, and then maybe less respect for like Jordan Peterson, is like they're very rights of the individual. They're all about individuality and this and that. And let's look at everybody on an individual case. But I'm thinking about this. I'm going, but that's not how we're built. That's not how we evolve. That's not where we're at as human beings. Human beings are innately tribal. And that's one of the strengths of our species, is that we were innately tribal. And we will still continue to be innately tribal, even as we globalize. And one of the things I'm seeing right now, I think one of the biggest the biggest difficulties, I want to call like the birthing pains of globalism right now, is that we're our innately tribal kind of creature, but we're expected to have sort of this global community. We're all supposed to be in this one unitary kind of ideology, like one world economy, one world,
the empire of nothing,
world government. Yeah, exactly. Here we go. The Antichrist will show down and whatever. It's like that. But we are moving into a more globalized society. And maybe crypto is something that's going to be the new economy. Who knows? But John. But what I'm seeing right now, and again in book 4, I'm kind of at the very end of the book, like the end chapters, I'm talking about how we're aiming towards sort of a one world religion that's based on feels before reals. That's based on, like, if you go and you look at tribal affiliations, that can be anything. That can be ideology. That can be my group versus your group. That can be ethnicity. That can be religion. That can be political identity, those kinds of things. We're innately looking for an in-group and an out-group because we're social animals. That's just how we work. And so we need to find some way to sort of account for that. Otherwise, we're going to be doing what we're doing right now, which is sort of resisting against, whatever, one tribe against another. And who's going to be the one who's going to have the predominant ideology, the predominant religion, the predominant whatever, the way of thinking. And that's where we're at.
That's an interesting point. And one thing is that because obviously you've talked about 1965 and the sexual revolution, etc. But the other thing that's happened over the course of, the 20th century was the decline of religion. And of course, by the end of the century, we're pretty much a secular society. And I mean, you could argue that what's happened is that we've had to replace this with a sort of almost secularized religion. And maybe that secularized religion is the religion of feels. Right, it's like it's sort of like because we're
religion of me,
because we've got this, because people have got this desire for like some sort of spiritual sort of basis. It's like we don't.
I'm spiritual but not religious. That's what that's the new religion right now, and it's whatever floats your boat, man. Fly your freak flag. And I know where Ryan's gonna. I think I know where Ryan's gonna go with this too, but it's like.
It's like wokeness. Wokeness is the new religion now.
Age of ego is where we're at. We're at age of ego. Now, I just to throw this out there really quickly is that I've been reading just sort of little snippets of this book that is I think what's it called, the coming age of neo feudalism or something like that. And the guy, I forget the name of the author, but he makes this comparison of like how we have like our oligarchs right now. And then we have what he calls the clerisy, which used to be the clergy, because that was like the second estate or third estate under, whatever, social, I don't know. And then, of course, there's the workers and proletariats and all that stuff, right? But I thought what was interesting was the clerisy was the clergy of old is now our social media. It's now it's like the Church of Oprah. It's like the the Beyonce church service that happened like a couple of years, like back in 2018, where we can all just sort of get together and it's all inclusive and it's all about love and we're all different. It's this interfaith kind of thing. Whereas before you couldn't do something like that. So I think you're right, Troy. I think that there's still sort of this need, and maybe it's an emotional, feminized kind of need to sort of have some kind of religion, but it has to be according to what's proper or what is the most inclusive. How many people can we get to come together? And I keep pointing back towards this feminized, communitarian, collectivist ideal that everybody just gets together. And I'm already seeing this in popular media. They're calling it the village. It takes a village to raise a child. So no longer do you send your children to to school, or like I see conservatives wanting to homeschool their kids because the village keeps saying we don't trust you to raise your kids with the kind of values that this new globalized society has. And I just saw what Chris Von Erich was saying. Our values are gone. We have no more values. We do, but they're collectivist values now. And you're not allowed to raise your child. You're not allowed to instill them with your personal values, because those values conflict with what the village wants those values to be.
All right, well, here, let's illustrate this. A simple story. We were talking before about how like it's been going on this way since the 80s, 70s, 60s, whatever. Picture, and everybody knows this example. You got that parent who says, don't watch TV, it rots your brains. The kid doesn't watch TV. But then the dad's busy, the kid wants to play. He's like, dude, I'm busy for this. Just go watch some TV. So what message is that sending a kid who's now an adult? It's not that TV is sometimes bad and sometimes good. It's that whoever has the power in the relationship gets to decide the rules. Take that 6-year-old and you make them a 35-year-old. And now what have they been raised understanding? Their value system is I'm important. If I have the power, I get to make the rules. And you're seeing that manifest. So I would make a very strong case that it's failed parenting strategies. Now we could argue whether, feminism broke up the home, or, people had free love and now they just don't care, or we've built too many widgets and we're too safe. And so now we can have these stupid things, but that's kind of where we're at. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this is where you thought I was going, but now it's not that emotions run the day or feels before reals. It's that without any consequences, our feelings become our reality. And everybody knows I'm feeling this way, therefore it's true, and you will accommodate it. And everything seems to stem from that. And this is why you can't reason with somebody or talk them out of it, because they're going back to that 6-year-old me that dad was like, just go watch TV, leave me alone for a bit. Mm-hmm. So reason won't work. The only thing that works is boundaries. And that's the problem, because anybody who's tasked with the boundaries, that would be government essentially, or police, or your church, they've all bent the knee to the same thing, because they're the same kids raised by the same crappy parents doing the same thing now. So all they're doing is pandering to these types instead of telling them no, so they can manipulate them to get whatever they want. Seats in the pews or votes for my party. And so we're in this weird downward spiral. And I don't think there's a resolve for it that works for everybody. We can't go back to it, because you're essentially having to reprogram an entire society to have good parents again. It's not going to happen. So you just got to let it burn. What else can you do other than make sure what within your sphere of control has good boundaries? Rich is going to raise a good daughter. You're going to raise a good daughter. John has got a really awesome dog. What else can you really do?
Well, to build on what Ryan is kind of saying there, I'm kind of with him on this, surprisingly enough, because I think the big issue is, like, you don't have boundaries. You've turned politics into a popularity contest. And when was the last time our politicians didn't pander to us? Like, the last president of the United States that asked the people to sacrifice something was Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time,
term.
like a European state leader or an Asian state leader, in the case of John and his yellow fever, asked the people of those countries to sacrifice for the betterment of the people as a whole? Because everyone knows, like, if you run a budget, sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice. Sometimes you're going to have to save for something. Sometimes you're going to have to kind of tighten the belt on a few things. And since when have the government ever done that? And you have to keep in mind, they're managing your money. Because if they want to tax you at 95%, they can. And they will. And the only way to avoid that is to vote for responsible people who have responsible financial policies and treat people like adults. The problem is the people who vote do not want to be treated like adults. They want to get the black Amex handed to them and be told to just go nuts.
I think the system's a little. I think it's innately broken system, anyways, because nowadays, like really smart guys, like for example, like Rich or myself, like we're smart enough to realize that okay, we don't want to work for anybody. We're just going to work for ourselves. Like smart people don't gravitate toward politics. They're not like, oh, I'm like really smart. I want to be a politician.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically like attracts idiots, and that's a part of what we're seeing in America is that as technology advances into like kind of the new order, like Rolo likes to say, more and more people are going to be self-employed, and the last thing they want to do is go work for the government. So like dummies by default are going to take the jobs and make it harder for everybody else.
Well, I like the idea of, what's her name? The Cortez woman?
AOC.
Yeah, AOC. Like, she was so broke that she couldn't afford to put a down payment on an apartment in Washington when she got elected as a senator, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, Congresswoman.
Yeah, if you're that broke, should you even be allowed to run for an election? Like, I know it's somewhat unpopular to say it, but I'm a big fan of the original form of democracy where if you don't own property and you're not a positive tax contributor, you don't get to vote. And if you run a campaign, you have to self-fund it. I like that approach because that way you take everything else out and you're relying on the individual. And the people who make it through that hoop are the people who really want to do it. And to quote, to misquote Thomas Jefferson, the only person who should be allowed to be president is the person who has to be dragged into the office kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because people gravitate towards power. And the people who gravitate toward power are the last people you want in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I made this point. Go ahead, Carl. Finish it.
No, go. I was done.
I'm going to close this out here because we're getting down to 90 minutes, and I told you guys 90 minutes. I wanted to make one final point, though, is that when I'm making these comparisons, like I did this on Wednesday, and this is sort of my theory as well, is that for men, amongst men, our natural kind of proclivity is to be more merit-based, meritocracy, dominance hierarchies, competence hierarchies. And that translates into the way we run things or the way that we cooperate. So a male form of government, a patriarchy, if you will, is exactly what you're talking about, which is do some things, make the most of yourself, and you have a say in where we all as a team, whether that's our country, our tribe, our corporation, whatever it is, then you get a say in where it is that we're going to go. If you're not contributing, then you don't. For women, it's different because women evolved differently. They evolved to be collectivists. They've evolved to be communitarians because there was strength in numbers. Women are the vulnerable sex. They're the ones who have to have some sort of interdependency. So when you see things like democratic socialists and you see someone like AOC spouting off about how great it would be to have socialism, that's a feminine form of government. Because when you distribute things, resources for men, it's always merit-based. You get a vote. You get X amount of dollars because you did a better job than Joe. For women, it's you get one and 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 everybody gets equal so that we can all survive as sort of this collective because women are vulnerable. They used to be anyways in our ancestral past. So for a female form of government, it is, of course, it's going to be much more collectivist. It's going to be much more socialist. That seems to make sense. And now you have more women in positions of power. Is it any surprise that we're talking about Antifa? Is it any surprise that we're talking about socialism or communism or all of this stuff that's going on right now? I don't even know where, I don't even think, terms like communism or socialism are even apt right now, because I don't know if they even know where they're going with it, because they don't know anything. It just feels right. It feels good to have everybody included. Same thing with the Beyonce interfaith worship service, so we can all feel good about coming together and just singing songs and being religious but not, or spiritual but not religious. That is communitarianism. That is syncretism. That is all is one. Everybody come together. We're all gonna it's free love, right? It's all groovy, and we're all gonna be tolerant of each other until we're not tolerant of each other.
Yeah, but look at what's happening in Chaz though. Look at some of the reports coming out of Chaz and some of the things that are happening there. I think it's becoming an animal. It's an Animal Farm situation, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like,
welcome to Animal Farm, the planetary version. Yes, that's
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna close us out with that. Let's go around the clock here. Rich, what do you got going on this week?
So I got 2 really good shows lined up this week. On Monday, I've lined up probably at least 6 to 10 police officers. Mm-hmm. Some are currently in the force, some are retired from the force, but I've been saying for the last 2 weeks to young men, if you're thinking about being or getting involved in law enforcement or becoming a cop, don't. Find something else to do besides firefighters get more women. But I think it's quite hostile for men to even consider law enforcement this time. So I have a lot of cops. I've got a couple of black cops. There's one guy that runs this channel called Officer Tatum. Mm-hmm. That one of my followers had introduced me to, who wants to chime in. So that should be a really good show on Before the Train Wreck. And then on Thursday, I got Dr. Anthony J joining me for Playing the Wind. We're going to talk about the proliferation of estrogen in everything in society and how it's making you fat, sick, and infertile.
I want to watch that. That'll be good. Ryan, what's going on?
Honestly, for me, book is going awesome. Audio book is still going on there, guys. Check it out on Amazon. Fuck Files. Good bookstores everywhere that are only online on Amazon or Kobo. And right now on YouTube, I am cranking out a giant series. I'm calling it the Sidebar. Think of like Rollo's Red Pill 101, but everything. Right now, we're doing what's going to be, we are doing a 10-part series on No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's like a Cole's Notes 101 level university type course. Basically, everybody who's been red pilled and knows what they're doing all started from here. So if you can get through this series and you haven't gotten your dick wet, then there's no hope for you, and you might as well just start the car in the garage and sit there and have a nap. Like, it's that good. It's that good. So come on and then check it out. We're already 5 episodes in. There's going to be 10 by the time we're done. Michael's story, Confessions of a Reformed Incel, game stuff, life stuff, psychology stuff, everything. Like, I cannot understate how awesome a resource this is, and you're wasting your time if you haven't been watching it by now. And that's all I got.
All right. Carl, are you still writing on Black Label Logic, man?
Yep.
Okay.
I've started writing again, so I'm not putting them out at 2 a week like I used to. I'm trying to get back to it. It's just trying to find something original to write about. There's still the original books, Gendernomics 1 and 2, with the Gendernomics 3 in the works. I'm still working on Pounding Beers, as you all can tell.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get back to it. It's been a while now. I'm hoping to get back to writing regularly and participating in these shows regularly. So hopefully I'll be here again next week.
Awesome. Troy, what's up?
Well, for me, pretty simple. Just follow me on YouTube. I am uploading videos most days during the week and going live as well several days a week on my YouTube channel. So follow me there, or rather go over and subscribe. The other thing to say is that my new collection is out. It's called Renegade Data and Domination. It's a collection of all the best essays and articles I've written over the last 5 years or so. It's a bit of a beast. There's over 150 articles in it. It's 400 pages in 2 volumes. It's loads and loads of material. All the best Return of King stuff that I did when I was Chief Game Rider over there. All the best stuff from my own website. And it's available. You'll see the links when you go over to my YouTube channel. So make sure you snap up a copy of that as well.
Cool. Sergeant Slaughter.
Yo, this Thursday, Body Language Mastery opens up again. It's going to be huge this time around. It's open for 5 days, closes on the 29th at midnight. And I'm live every single day for Generals June on my channel, where I'm going to interview all the generals, all the coaches, and the Hot Dude Army that are helping out with Body Language Mastery. The educational webinars start on July 1st, and going live right after this, I'm going to be on my channel. We're doing Dude Party. We're doing the Zoom formats. We're going to have like up to 12 people on the screen.
There you go.
And we're going to talk about Chaz, the area taking over in Washington State. And if you don't know about this, you're just tune in for a good laugh.
That'll be funny. And on the 25th, which is Thursday, you and I will be doing a show on my channel. Right?
Yes, sir.
Talking about body language mastery and some other, and just catching up, I guess. So we'll be doing that. Tomorrow, I will be on my show at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. I will probably be going through, I've got a backlog of emails from people asking me questions for certain things. So I might just do a Q&A, but I really want to sort of like get through, like people like say I need to do an email show. So I'm probably going to do an email show tomorrow. So that's coming up. Book 4 it's thick. It is really, really thick. And I'm actually kind of glad that I've held off this long to see what's going on sort of in society to make it a little bit more pertinent. I'm working on the foreword actually right now. I'm going to be sending it off to edits probably by the end of this week or this coming week. And hopefully have something for you guys at least up on Amazon by mid-July. So that's the update on book 4 right now. Gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me today. And you guys, if anybody's watching still, you can go take this over to Dude Party and about another 10, 15 minutes?
About 10 minutes, we're going live.
10 minutes. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you next week. I think, Rich, you are hosting next week, right?
I can't host. I'll let you know towards the end of the week.
Okay. So it's going to be Rich or Ryan. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
We'll figure it out. See you guys. Peace.